too much inflation or you're stuck with too much economic weakness. Navigate through the middle, and that means something like stagflation.
Jerome Powell's worst nightmare isn't a recession, it isn't inflation, it's both at once, with rising unemployment thrown in. An economic vice with no release valve. Stagflation.
I got my eyes on you. Boy, goodness.
Strip away the jargon and you're looking at rising unemployment, crawling growth, and prices that won't stop climbing. Each problem alone is manageable. Together, they form an economic perfect storm that has historically broken entire monetary systems. Here's what makes it a trap. Every escape route leads to another locked door. Print money to juice employment and you torch the currency. Raise rates to kill inflation and you strangle whatever growth remains. It's a vice, tightening from both sides simultaneously, requiring sacrifice, patience, and political courage that evaporates during election years. And make no mistake, those sacrifices are coming for everyone. When the world's reserve currency wobbles, every economy linked to the dollar feels the tremor. Some countries are already deeper in the hole. Others are just beginning to realize they're standing on the edge. The Federal Reserve operates under a deceptively simple mission: maintain maximum employment and stable prices. Stagflation is the only scenario where the Fed fails at both simultaneously, which explains the institutional panic. It's watching the trap close while holding tools that make things worse no matter which way you turn them. But those mandates aren't what they appear. Maximum employment doesn't mean zero unemployment. It means the lowest sustainable rate before labor shortages create their own problems. Think of it like a freeway. Too many cars and traffic grinds to a halt, but you also need enough cars to justify the road's existence. The Fed is trying to find optimal flow while someone keeps randomly adding and removing vehicles. Keep that image in mind. We'll return to it. Stable prices is equally misleading. The Fed's actual target is 2% annual inflation, a figure pulled somewhat arbitrarily from thin air over a decade ago. The theory: gentle price increases motivate people to invest or spend rather than hoard cash. A little inflation greases the wheels. Too much melts the engine entirely. Right now, the Fed is quietly sounding alarm bells that both mandates are endangered. Surface-level statistics tell a reassuring story. Inflation has retreated from its pandemic peak. Unemployment remains historically reasonable. If you squint hard enough, everything looks fine. But look closer and the foundation cracks. The United States just recorded its largest jobs revision in history. The revision? Close to 1 million jobs that never existed. The implication: if baseline data is this corrupted, what else are we missing? The problem runs deeper than miscounting. Survey response rates are collapsing. Data gathering agencies face mounting political pressure to produce favorable numbers. We routinely caveat Chinese statistics as unreliable because officials face career incentives to manipulate results. Here's the uncomfortable question: are American bureaucrats somehow immune to similar pressures? Even perfect data wouldn't capture the full picture. Official unemployment only counts people actively seeking work. It ignores labor force participation declining for years. It doesn't measure underemployment: the engineer driving for Uber, the graduate stocking shelves, the tradesperson cobbling together 3 part-time gigs. 1 hour of paid work per week makes you employed in the statistics. It doesn't make you economically viable.
Inflation metrics carry equivalent blind spots. Shrinkflation, where your cereal box gets smaller but costs the same.
And a Cadbury cream egg from a couple years ago, and I brought it. This is this year's egg.
Yes.
This is the egg from a couple years ago.
Look at that!
Judge for yourself, America.
Housing costs systematically underestimated in official calculations. The Consumer Price Index claims prices rose over a quarter in recent years. Ask anyone buying groceries if that matches their experience. And here's the kicker. Even if inflation returns to the 2% target tomorrow, it doesn't reverse years of runaway increases. The toothpaste doesn't go back in the tube. Your dollar, that lost a substantial chunk of its purchasing power, doesn't magically recover. That wealth is simply gone. So why the sudden stagflation panic? Because the cracks are widening. Jobs revisions signal deeper employment weakness. The gig economy masks growing underemployment. More concerning, America's GDP growth increasingly depends on a shrinking set of drivers: government spending, AI investment, and consumer consumption. All three are wobbling. Government spending runs on government debt, a problem simmering for years, now reaching critical temperature. Recent fiscal policy cut taxes significantly while maintaining spending levels, just redirecting dollars from social programs toward defense and border security. Here's the thing. The US government can print currency, but printing doesn't equal valuing. The real constraint is demand for dollars, and taxes are the ultimate demand driver. Pay your taxes or go to prison. It's compelling motivation. Lower taxes mean lower currency demand. Economics 101. Lower demand equals lower prices. The price of a dollar stays a dollar, but its purchasing power erodes. Lenders, anticipating weaker future dollars, demand higher interest rates. Alternative reserve currencies start looking attractive. This is already happening. Major institutions are diversifying away from US treasuries. When the government auctions bonds, buyers are harder to find. The figure? Interest rates the US must pay are climbing steadily. In the medium term, this forces austerity, slashed spending, and raised taxes to service debt. That eliminates a major GDP component, triggering contraction and unemployment. The vice tightens another notch. The United States has delayed this reckoning longer than most economies because global dollar usage creates artificial demand. But international players aren't stupid. They watch the deficit balloon and policy gyrate erratically. They're hedging now rather than holding the bag later. Stagflation is typically blamed on central banks, but here's what most people miss. Effective management requires synchronized fiscal and monetary policy working in concert. Think of it as a duet requiring perfect timing. Two musicians playing the same piece, one handling melody, the other harmony. The central bank controls overall tempo. The government has granular control over specific sectors. When both hands work together, you get sophisticated economic management. When they fight each other, you get noise. Coordination is difficult because politicians resist cooling the economy, even when long-term interests demand it. Short election cycles reward immediate gratification over sustainable planning. This is why central banks are supposed to be independent, appointed on longer terms so they can enact unpopular policies that prevent catastrophe. Except that independence is eroding. Remember that freeway metaphor? The Fed is trying to manage traffic flow, while the government randomly opens and closes lanes, changes speed limits without warning, and occasionally drives the wrong way.
On inflation, chaotic trade negotiations have shredded supply chain reliability, creating price pressure from both supply and demand sides. Fewer goods reaching shelves means higher prices for available inventory, independent of tariff costs, eventually passed to consumers. Tax cuts skewed toward high earners amplify the problem because the wealthy are the only group driving consumption growth. The statistic: a small fraction of households now account for half of all consumer spending. Give them additional tax breaks, and they pump more money into narrow markets, inflating prices in those sectors. Beyond the obvious inequity, there's a pragmatic problem. Concentrated spending requires fewer workers. Many people, each spending modest amounts at different stores, requires many cashiers. One person spending large amounts at one luxury store requires one salesperson. The math doesn't scale the same way, which means employment suffers even as top-line spending looks healthy. This puts the Fed in an unprecedented bind. Different policies impact different wealth strata differently, and the gap keeps widening. It's like trying to set one thermostat for two buildings needing completely different temperatures. For wealthy asset owners, lower interest rates primarily inflate asset values. Consider a company earning $10 million annually with a $100 million valuation, a 10% return. At moderate interest rates, investors get double the return compared to savings accounts. Drop rates to low single digits, and that same company could justify a $200 million valuation while still providing twice the risk-free rate. The company's fundamentals haven't changed. It's still earning the same $10 million. But the price investors will pay has doubled, simply because alternative, safe investments pay so little. Rising valuations predominantly benefit the wealthy, who own most assets, giving them more spending power they already have in surplus. For households without investable assets, rising prices make catching up harder, especially in housing. Lower rates help marginally. A mortgage dropping from moderate to low rates cuts payments significantly, but a credit card with high double-digit interest declining a few percentage points barely registers. This isn't just a moral failure. Crushing the majority to benefit asset holders reduces economy-wide productivity. That company, jumping from $100 million to $200 million valuation, still producing identical output. That's pure inflation in asset prices without corresponding real growth. Exactly the kind of distortion that stagflation creates. Higher asset prices, lower employment. That's stagflation. And there's a strong possibility America is already there, but hasn't recognized it yet, because structural economic changes mask the symptoms. So why does American stagflation merit global panic when other countries face similar or worse conditions?
First, nobody wants to become Britain. Their struggles preview America's potential trajectory. Second, global economic architecture depends fundamentally on U.S. stability. American stagflation radiates outward, damaging even countries already hurting. If dollar stability evaporates quickly, that alone constitutes a worldwide crisis. Third, the United States lacks robust safety nets for households crushed between converging economic pressures. European nations have stronger social support systems. The same forces hitting America cut deeper because there's less cushioning the blow. We've reached the point where avoiding hard choices only makes them harder. Stagflation isn't a theoretical risk. It's a diagnosis of current conditions. The question isn't whether America faces this trap, but how quickly policymakers acknowledge reality and start making painful decisions required to escape it. Those decisions will hurt. Austerity measures to reduce debt, tax increases to restore currency demand, spending cuts that eliminate jobs, interest rate adjustments that crush asset values while barely helping working households. These aren't pleasant options. But they're also the choices that prevent the trap from becoming permanent. The alternative is worse. Prolonged stagnation where the majority struggles while a narrow elite prospers. Productivity declines, and the dollar's global role gradually evaporates. That's not a crisis you solve later. That's a crisis that compounds until it breaks something fundamental. Central banks can't fix this alone. Fiscal policy must coordinate rather than counteract monetary efforts. Political leaders must prioritize long-term stability over short-term election optics. International partners must trust that America takes its reserve currency responsibilities severely. None of that is happening right now, which means the stagflation trap will keep tightening until something forces a reckoning, either by choice or by collapse. The vice closes slowly at first, then faster, then all at once. The clock is running. The choices are narrowing. And everyone, everywhere, will feel what comes next. The question is whether we'll choose our exit or wait until we're forced through it. The trap doesn't care which we pick, but we should.